Mr. Chairman. I want to start, if I can, by quickly thanking Ranking Member Murray for her comments, acknowledging what's happening in our country. We can't ignore the racist violence that has killed George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and so many, many others. We must commit ourselves to change and using this committee as well as others to advance anti-racist policies in health, in education, and for workers, including today's hearing about reopening colleges. You know, millions of families, millions of students across this country are wondering when and how colleges are going to safely reopen. And I know this is a hard question that's going to vary from campus to campus. But President Daniels, you wrote a recent op-ed entitled, "Why Failing to Reopen Purdue University This Fall Would Be an Unacceptable Breach of Duty." So your op-ed makes it sound like you have already decided that you're going to reopen no matter what come this fall. And in that op-ed, you discuss how you're going to mitigate risks to undergraduate students. But I notice there's almost no discussion of addressing risks to workers or to faculty who tend to be older and more at risk. Nothing about the risk to low-wage workers or hourly workers, workers who are often Black or brown. These workers are responsible for serving the food in the dining halls and cleaning the dorms and the classrooms and keeping your campus running. They are particularly vulnerable and they have the least power, and they are getting sick at disproportionate rates. So President Daniels, Purdue has nearly 17,000 employees. Nearly half are staff who won't be able to work normally this fall. They might get sick, they might need to care for a loved one, they might have small children that need care, or because of their age or pre-existing health conditions, they may not feel safe coming onto a college campus during a pandemic. So I just want to know, have you laid out publicly a plan for these workers?
Well, thank you, Senator.
Actually, let me just ask specifically, have you agreed to continue paying them if they can't come to work or if they decide it's too risky to show up for work?
Well, thank you for I'm so glad you asked the question because, first of all, you could not have better expressed our entire philosophy and strategy. I don't know if you were here for the opening presentation, but I enunciated it then. And our entire strategy is built around the protection of the vulnerable. And that starts with faculty and staff. Starting next week, we will have one-to-one visits with our faculty to try to figure out what we have a grid that attempts to estimate their degree of vulnerability. There's some we don't want near campus at all. There are others we will make an accommodation for. But
so if I can just understand, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be limited on time here. If I can just understand, you haven't put out a plan publicly yet, and it sounds like you haven't worked one out, but you're planning to work it out one-on-one with your employees, is that right?
Our plan is entirely based on the protection of the vulnerable, and that will include trying to make individual accommodations for those about whom we have the most concern. As I mentioned, about a third of our staff.
I was asking about whether or not you'd already laid out a plan, and I take the answer on that is no. Because
no, the answer, of course, is yes. It's very comprehensive, and
I just hadn't seen it publicly. I just hadn't seen this plan laid out. Because my question is really about who has power and who has a voice in these decisions. You know, best practices are best practices only if everyone is at the table who's going to be affected when those plans are being laid out. So I just want to move on for the time being, but I'll follow up in writing to try to get public commitments that going forward you're going to include both faculty and staff at the table, and they're going to explain about how this is going to intersect with their pay and how you safely reopen this campus. Dr. Paxson, I want to stay on the topic of power and accountability. In addition to being the president of Brown University, you're also the vice chair of the board for the Association of American Universities, which signed a letter last week from the American Council on Education, which is the very powerful college lobby, urging Congress to, quote, quickly enact temporary COVID-19 related liability protections for higher education institutions and systems. Now, Dr. Paxson, as you know, current law imposes liability only when the college has behaved unreasonably under all the circumstances. The law does not impose automatic liability when somebody gets sick or even when somebody dies. Instead, it's liability only when, for example, in a pandemic, a college doesn't take reasonable efforts to clean up common spaces or to separate desperately sick students. So when colleges lobby to change that standard and to walk away from it, even if they are extraordinarily careless with the lives of their students, even if these colleges take completely unreasonable risks, even if someone dies, what message does it send to our families and our students? You know, would it make you more comfortable or less comfortable as the parent of an incoming student?
Dr. Paxson, we're well over time, but you take whatever time you need to answer that question.
Thank you very much. I do not want protection from being careless. That is not what we're about. And if we are careless, if we don't follow guidelines, that's something that should not be protected in any way, shape, or form. The fact is, though, we are in a brand new pandemic. We've never seen this before. We're in uncharted territory. I think many institutions are very nervous that even if they play by the rules scrupulously, that they will still be subject to class action lawsuits. They'll probably prevail if they've done them right, but the cost of defending those lawsuits will take money away from tuition, financial aid, not from tuition, from financial aid, and all of the support that we provide for our students. So I am in favor of very carefully crafted liability protection that in no way, shape, or form permits us to be careless with people's lives.
Well, I
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Senator
As
Warren.
we're over, if I can, I just want to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter statements for the record on this issue from Americans for Financial Reform, the Student Borrower Protection Center, Public Citizen, American Association for Justice, and Georgetown law professor David Vladeck. You know, the public should know that a college, just like any institution,
Thank you, Senator
has
Martin.
to behave
So ordered.
reasonably. That's what the law requires. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Braun.